Welcome, everybody, to a Delco Nerd Network podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Ragucci, and here with a few friends in the Delaware County area, we get in a basement and we talk about a certain topic. Today's topic, of course, is going to be our third annual DNNeys. That's when we talk about all the movies we watched this past year. Of course, to host with me, as always, the triple threat, Chris Trio.
Gooch, I'm excited, man. How are you? I'm ready to talk some movies.
Doing well. Excited to talk about interesting year in film.
Gotcha. Are you feeling a bit about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think my list was kind of tough.
Interesting to like pick out your top 5 and such.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have as many honorable mentions as I've had in past years,
Right.
and I have a lot of ugly films.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have the entirety of SPUMM to get to, so I'm really excited to talk about that.
Excited to
Yeah.
recount it for the last time, hopefully. Yeah, I mean, let me address the elephant in the room. Where is the DNNey founder, Luke Kenny? Well, I didn't talk to him about saying this, but I'll just say it anyway. So when we were talking, Luke was like, we kind of planned this like a few months in advance, and we started talking to him, and he's like, dude, I haven't watched any movies this year. It's like, well, that's a problem. So Luke's been busy with a few different things, life and all that jazz. So he was unfortunate to make us. Maybe he'll come back for the 4th annual next year. Maybe.
Who knows?
We want to try to get him on for some other stuff. I mean,
absolutely.
He's we've been kind of cooking in the background with him. So hopefully, maybe sooner rather than later. Fingers crossed on that.
He will be missed, of course, as always.
Of course. He's not on strike. He was on strike last year.
Exactly.
Jokingly, but
creator of the patented Luke Kenny rating system that we still use to this day.
I think we started using that during the first? No,
it was during his. It was during Fraserthon, which was
the first.
Was that the first one that we did?
Indiana Jones.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
he was the second.
But patented, of course.
Yeah, which we'll be using a lot today.
Indeed, absolutely, going all up and down the list.
But yeah, before we jump into our main topic on the monthly podcast, we usually like to check in on what we're doing, playing, watching, things of that nature. I'll go first, Trio.
Yeah, I love it.
A lot of repeats from last year or last month, especially since we've recorded so close. So not too much new. But Split Fiction came out on Thursday, and I did get one session of that in. I'm playing with friend of the show, Casey Wellman. We've been, since No Way Out, we've been tackling those games together. 3 hours into Split Fiction, and yeah, it's definitely better than It Takes Two. I think Hazelight really found their jive with the I don't want to say art style, the choice of setting, the colorful aspect of it, the fun. No Way Out was just, I think its tone was just too serious for what this gameplay style is, which I think just allows for hilarity in and of itself, but just, since you're messing around with a friend, I think a lot of humor can happen naturally within that.
That's true.
And I think the stories they've done with It Takes Two and Split Fiction sort of play into that, like on another level that No Way Out just didn't really do. But yeah, really enjoying it. I won't say too much. I think we'll probably review it within a few weeks. But
yeah, no, I'm about probably an hour and a half. We played last night. My girlfriend and I, we were playing It Takes Two. Yeah, It Takes Two gets really long in the tooth. I'm not gonna lie.
I remember it being a bit long.
I was like, oh, this isn't the end. We're not, like, once we got to the clock tower thing, and I was like, oh, it feels like we're kind of crescendoing here, and then like, oh, there's still way more to go. So we're like, all right, we're gonna move on to It Takes Two. To Split Fiction. And yeah, I can't help but agree, Gooch. It's so much fun. I like how they've kind of taken the banner of this co-op centric studio and they're really just full throttle on it. And it's an interesting concept. Bouncing back and forth between fantasy and science fiction is really genius.
I wanted to say, for those who don't know, the basic premise is there's this company and they bring in writers and they put them in this Animus a la Assassin's Creed kind of machine that like brings these ideas to life, and your two characters, Zoe and Mio, get trapped. Well, not trapped. They
kind of. No, they do.
Something happens to where they're both in the same one. So they're both. One is a sci-fi writer, one is a fantasy writer, and their ideas are sort of clashing. And they're trying to work how to get out of it. And the company's sort of like evil.
It's
like,
so obviously like it's not even I think a spoiler to say. It's like out the gate. It's like these guys seem not okay, and then it's just immediately
their CEOs on a giant screen like
Right.
talking about what they do. It's like that sort of thing. And I was talking to Casey. I'm like, do you think like companies actually like do this?
No, it's very cartoonish.
Like when you walk into Google, is whoever the CEO of Google, is he talking to all the employees every day?
Maybe,
saying the same thing?
I
It's
don't
like,
know.
oh, God.
It definitely feels heightened and like cartoony in that way for sure.
Yeah. Still playing KCD2. Finally got past the wedding. 42 hours later. Won't say two more, but it's my game of the year so far.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I can't help but agree.
Like hard to debate.
Can't put it down. Genuinely.
Yeah. I'm having so much fun with it, but still. Yes, kind of early on, even though I'm like 42 hours into it.
Yeah. I'm curious how the main quest is split up and how truly deep we are. Because like on the PlayStation thing, now that I've gotten to that like kind of second moment, it says I'm 75% through the main campaign. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm curious to see how that ends up.
Yeah, and I'm still playing Avowed. In the second zone there, the Emerald Stair, and I think the more I play it, the more I'm digging it. I've kind of figured it out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I really kind of like the gameplay loop. I really love the world of Pillars of Eternity. I'm really kind of interested in it. Is it a lot to kind of like as you shotgun through a new fantasy realm and they're talking about all these events like the Deadfire and Wodaga and all this stuff that I don't know. It's a little overwhelming, but I feel like that's sort of like what happens when you get into a new fantasy world. Like
Totally.
you just kind of get inundated with words and proper nouns and things like that.
I do like that like codex from what little I played. Now I do want to jump back more into it, like that they provide in the menu as you're going through conversation.
Yeah, you press X and it's like, what is the Deadfire?
Right.
And they'll tell you about it. Who is this god? And yeah, you can do that as many times as you want. Every time you see a word, it's like highlighted in like blue.
Right.
You can hit X and that'll come up.
Very cool.
But yeah, so I'm in the second area. I think I'm probably closer to like 25, 30 hours at this point.
All right.
I've encountered the second two companions, so there's 4.
Okay.
Kai, Marius, Giada, and Yatsli? Yeah.
Well, there's a dwarf, right? Too.
Yeah, Marius. He's
Gotcha.
the second one you get.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna jump back in eventually.
Jumping over to the PS5 side of the house, I finally beat Fantasian. And Trio, if you're wondering, what's the ending of Fantasian? Well, like any Final Fantasy JRPG, what do you think you're doing? Yeah, Trio, you're killing God. So
Of course.
yeah, finally beat it. I have to do like a little bit of new game plush stuff to get the platinum, but I'm on the road to that. And I also got the platinum for Resident Evil 6. I finished up my boosting. I went through it on a professional, and I'm fucking done with the worst game I've ever played.
Okay. Well, I'm happy. Like definitively, it feels like
I think Resident Evil 6 is I have no idea what my top 5 worst games of all
ever,
time are, but I'm very confident Resident Evil 6 would be on that list.
That makes sense. I'm sad to hear it because, like you said before, that's the known representation or reputation, I should say. And to hear you just confirm it makes me never want to go back to it ever again.
You never play it.
Yeah, there's no point.
I genuinely, you me, I can find the good and the bad.
Right, of course.
But there's nothing there's no juice in the squeeze here. None.
That sounds awful.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you finished it.
2 more Resident Evil games after like 4 years of going through all of them. I'm in the like probably the most exciting part, which is the new stuff.
I still can't believe you haven't played. Like I know you know the stories, right? At least for 8, I feel like you told me you watched a bit of a walkthrough, but
for Village.
Okay.
Village, I don't remember a lot about.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
Village, like I kind of like maybe I could like scramble the story to you right now.
Even
if I
me,
wanted
who's
to.
played it, I agree.
Yeah, like, but yeah, I'm just interested to see like how it. It's like, okay, now that I've gotten to like the Resident Evil story, like, even in Village, I feel like it hasn't really taken off from like where 6 and like those other games leave off with Jill and Chris and all the characters and love per se. I know Chris is in these other games, but like Claire isn't.
Right.
Jill is not. So yeah, I'm interested to see like where it takes off from that. I think I also have like 2 more animated movies that came out. I think Death Island and
those are like
not Damnation, Vendetta.
Those are canon.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I've been watching them where they take place in the timeline.
I love it. That's a Goochism if I've ever heard one.
Watching the animated films.
Committing to just watching playing the entire series, but then you're like, all right, well, there's movies that I have to watch in between them.
Yeah,
obviously.
they don't really add too much.
Sure, but it's something. No, you can check it off. You're like, no, I did see that.
Some of the movies, like Leon is only in 2 main series games, and some of the movies cover what he's doing in between 4 and his appearance in 6.
I see.
But like, it's really like,
so I guess
it's very ancillary. Like,
we don't know where I guess
we don't know where
Leon. We don't know where Leon is at all.
None of those characters.
That's
that's what I'm just kind of surprised at. Like, whatever the next Resident Evil game, like, I think doing Ethan Winters and kind of like bringing in a new protagonist for that reboot made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I feel like as Capcom is now a thing of the past, and Capcom is really on their A game, I think bringing back like someone like Sherry Birkin or Sheva or Jill or like some of these characters you've played with in the past would be a good idea.
I feel like they've earned the right at this point. I think, like you said, they needed to do that. They need to have a clean slate to get back in the game, especially after what you're describing with 6. So yeah, I think that right has been earned to bring back these like mainstay characters and let you know what's going on. They know what they're doing now.
Yeah, and quickly from some movies and TV, I just started Invincible season 3. It's good. Trio. I want to say something you might never think I'd say.
Okay.
The animation looks pretty good.
I told you. Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Think now, like, I would like to watch like the first episode of season 1 just to like side by side it. But like, I was like, I was paying attention to the shadows and the depth, and I'm like, okay, like maybe I should stop saying Invincible animation looks like shit.
I just think that whole conversation overall would never have even happened without the internet saying that it's bad. I don't remember how that wasn't. Maybe I did notice it in the first season. Maybe I was sitting there and I was like, well, I don't like.
I think what brought it up was the fact that it was taking so long.
That's true too.
And
so
that
makes
like,
sense.
What's taking so long?
That's fair. And I don't
and
even
the fact
realize
that there's a comic book panel that's like this, but they did an animation where he goes to the convention and he's talking to the writer,
right?
And having this like meta conversation about like making comics, but
it's for animation. I actually like that a lot.
And they do that in the comic where like it's just like a panel. It's the same panel,
right? Yeah,
but just different text. And it's like, and I'm like, well, like.
And I don't even know if we really know what was causing the delay. I think that the delay on the second season was that they were writing 2, 3, and 4, because I know they have the voice recording done for season 4 now as well already. So they're just continuing to animate, or maybe it was 2 and 3. I can't remember. But I'm glad you're enjoying it, Gooch. There was one episode I just got to, the last episode. There was a really cool moment, animation-wise, and I thought it was really well done. I'm excited to talk about that entire season.
Daredevil Born Again also started. I only watched the first episode. I'm going to try to watch the second one tonight. But
I actually did too, yeah.
It sucks when there's a spoiler in like the first 20 minutes of a show that's like pretty big. I have to admit, I got spoiled of that before I even started. And I was kind of like...
That's because we're on... I know. And you know what the fucked up part is?
We were just talking about FOMO. Me not watching this episode the minute it dropped.
But I don't even think you could have avoided it that way. Because, like, even before the episode, I just saw everyone going, well, Foggy's dead. Foggy's dead. Sorry. A spoiler, I guess. It's literally in the first 5 minutes of the episode. And it's just like, it was something that you could not avoid, sadly. And I think it's very, like, people were sharing GIFs of it almost immediately after the fact. I think if you're someone who pays attention to this in any sort of way like we do, it was almost unavoidable, truly. And I agree, because that would have been so much more impactful right off the bat.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I actually wasn't watching a lot of, like, the trailers that were coming out for it. Like, I really don't know much about Born Again besides like what we knew from like years ago. I know it was rebooted. I know it's like a different project from what it originally was.
Right.
I remember we did like that Marvel.
It was less of a continuation. It was more of like a lawyer like
it was
drama.
like a reboot.
Yeah.
I can't believe they started with that idea.
I think legally they couldn't use any of that stuff at that point. Right. Was the problem. Like, and now they've gotten outside that window that's allowed. I could be totally wrong about that, by the way.
I think you're right.
But I think that's what it was. but I apologize. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I mean, I don't have too much to say. The first episode was great.
I agree.
Yeah.
There was definitely that scene of him landing on the roof.
Yeah, it was a little janky.
It wasn't even the one of him.
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't even the one of him swinging up like after Bullseye. It was the first. It's maybe not even in the episode.
The first time he lands.
Yeah, when he like lands and he just like
it looks like someone like took a still image and he just like
and then he's like and it goes into him like you can't take 5 extras. But by the way, can I just say I've realized to like the normal person, like I was talking to Jay, my brother, about The Flash. This was like a month or 2 ago.
the Flash movie.
Yeah, and he was like, "Dude, I saw The Flash." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Dude, I loved it. It was great." And he's like, and he was like, "Dude, I thought it was a lot of fun." Like, and you know, we
I'm
saw Batman.
obsessed with the Flash.
Well, and I was like, "Yeah, there's some wonky CGI," and he's like, "Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really even notice it." I'm like, I really think they test these with like general audiences that aren't Twitter people and aren't on the internet at all times, and they just give it. They're just like, "Yeah, this is fine. It's fine." Like, yeah. And they're like, okay, we'll continue along with it. But yeah, aside from that, dude, Bullseye, just in that first, just being the worst, I loved it. It was great. It was really good.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it picks up right where it left off.
Absolutely.
So I'm really excited to see what they do with Born Again.
Yeah, maybe we should bleep that when we put this up with me saying I didn't even think about it. I mean, it's everywhere, but like, so sorry if you're watching on the live stream. But I mean, it's within the first, I think, 5 minutes of the first episode. So either way,
I'll think about it.
what else, Gooch?
Watch Substance. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
And we watched Tomb Raider, which I guess is a great time to announce that we're doing a video game rewind review series.
Rewind review.
Rewind review.
It's a tough one. I do it all the time.
Yeah, I don't know if we talked about it last time. I think we talked about that we were cooking on it, but yeah, we are doing a video game rewind review series. We already recorded Street Fighter. We're watching the first Tomb Raider movie from the 2000s with Angelina Jolie. Then we're doing Doom. And then Warcraft and Assassin's Creed. It's a very curated list. It took us a while to kind of nail down what exactly we wanted to do because there is a lot to pick from in just the video game movie genre. But yeah, once we finish the 4th one, we'll probably start putting them out, and please look forward to it. Please be excited.
Yeah, it's a wide gambit. I feel like, especially of early on video game movies, starting from like, Street Fighter, which was one of the earliest ones, and then we get to like the mid 2010s with Assassin's Creed. But I think that's a good place to start, or to stop, I should say.
Trio, what's going on with your life?
Gooch, not a ton actually since we've last talked. I do have a few. As far as the TV and movie stuff goes, a lot of documentaries as we like to watch. Me and my girlfriend, 2 in particular. They were on Hulu. We've been watching the other one. We were continuing it today. But the first one was Devil in the Family. It was about this girl, Ruby Frankie. Have you ever heard of her? Apparently, like this
Ruby
kind
Tuesdays?
of Ruby. I fucking forgot that place even existed. I
didn't expect that to get you.
She was like one of these YouTube family vloggers. I guess she started in 2018, and then by I think 2004 she was arrested because she was abusing her children.
2004?
2024. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And she was like, by the end, she was like abusing her kids. I actually don't want to give too much away because it's a kind of wild and interesting story. She seems like a terrible mother. I would definitely recommend watching it if you're into crime stuff. It's good and interesting. But another thing we started watching last night, and we continue today, was an old Casey Anthony documentary, like about her and her daughter. Well, you remember the story?
Yeah.
For those of you who don't remember, this woman, I guess she was pretty young at the time, had a daughter who went missing for like a month and then finally reported her missing and was making up all these stories about what happened. And she actually just recently came back out as like a public figure trying to be like an advocate for, I think it's like privacy and like LGBTQ rights. And everyone's
Is she gay?
No. And she's like, everyone's just collectively shitting on her right now. And it's really interesting. I would definitely recommend watching the documentary. It's on Hulu. She did it allegedly. I don't know. It's a wild story.
I know. I remember it kind of being like,
It was a big story.
yeah. I remember it pretty well. Like I think it was like during the summer.
It was 2005, I think, was when it happened.
Yeah, I remember it like pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, different kind of age, but
I mean, yeah, I would have been 10. I just remember hearing the name, and I remember hearing people talking about it.
yeah, but like
And,
I remember people talking about it, and like like kids talking about it, making jokes about it. Yeah, I feel like it was very like common knowledge that this Casey Anthony woman killed her kid.
Yeah, it was just such an
like
obvious and terrible story. And then it's funny too. Well, it's not funny. It's interesting watching this documentary because it was made, I think, in 2008. So it's like cut for TV. So it does that thing where it cuts for a break, and then for the first 15 seconds back after the break, it re-explains what was just said. So that's an interesting little time capsule. But I would definitely recommend that. It's funny, Gooch. I forget I have Hulu. And there's actually a lot of really great stuff on there, especially TV wise.
Actually, you know what? I was thinking, like, going off of your documentary thing. I've been wanting to watch more documentaries. It's kind of like something. It's kind of like reading, where like I just don't give it the time. Well, actually, I've recently been trying to read more. I bring a book to work, and I try to get a chapter. I'm reading. Do you know the book? Well, actually, you might know it from my girlfriend Kathy and me possibly talking about it. Do you know A Court of Thorn and Roses?
I think I've seen the book. Yeah.
I'm reading it.
How is it?
It's pretty good. I like don't mind it. It's fantasy smut.
Sure.
Yeah, like that's what it is. For the uneducated out there. I actually do kind of I do like it. There's really nothing about it that I dislike. It's pretty cool. I honestly kind of read like autobiographies or biographies or like self-help kind of books. I don't get my fantasy from games, I don't get my fantasy from books, because I get it from games and movies. So it's like I'm already like checking a box. So it is kind of nice to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, reading is so hard for me. It takes
it's
forever.
like you're saying.
I just don't make time for it.
You don't make, and I do the same. It's even the same for movies with me, and we've talked about this on Discord. It's just, it's that thing you like to do, and it's funny. I'm sorry. It's that thing that if you like to do it, you just do it all the time. And the way I see people blow through books, it is kind of wild to me. My girlfriend was on a big reading kick for a while, but now since she's back in school, she doesn't have as much time. But Gooch, I'm glad you're enjoying it. You just reminded me. I actually started, speaking of Invincible, the comic. I picked up the first 2 volumes. I'm not terribly far into it. I got a few pages.
Compendiums or volumes?
No, it's the volumes. Okay. So I think the first one ends with Omni-Man doing his thing. Not to Mark, but to the Guardians. Yes. As far as I can see. Yeah. Because I was kind of peaked. Because, I know the story.
That lead up is a bit more than in the show.
Yeah, and it seems, I think it's like much more vague in as far as I can understand. But I'm excited to like read the comic now. I'm not trying to get ahead of where the books or where the show is.
I'm gonna start Compendium 3 and finish it soon.
How far ahead? How far ahead are you? Do you think?
Pretty far.
Pretty far.
So they're leading up to this character you mentioned called Conquest.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a little bit after that.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So they're getting far ahead. They said there's going to be 8 seasons of that. So I'm really curious to see how it covers it. And I'm very interested.
Christ.
I think that, for how long that
8 seasons?
How many compendiums are there?
Just crank them out.
Right. And I think that's what they're doing at this point. Yeah.
Like, just get it done.
Well, and that's why they recorded those 2 seasons at once. So I think that's a good idea. I think that's what
they did.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned. So they recorded, I'm pretty confident, the dialogue for season 2 and 3 at the same time. That's why these came out so quickly. And I think they've been I actually don't know if there's any confirmation. I would assume that they have been recording season 4 already and so on. So I think that's why season 2 took so long, because they were kind of planning out all of these seasons to kind of hit the ground running on them. Yeah. But yeah, I can't wait to see where Invincible goes. The art is very interesting and different.
It's a lot different than the show.
Definitely. And I kind of actually appreciate how like specific it is. It feels very individual, for lack of a better term. But
yeah, it's a lot different from like The Walking Dead. That's another one of Robert Kirkman, obviously. It's one of Kirkman's big 2 series are Invincible and The Walking Dead, and The Walking Dead and Invincible have a very different vibe, which
for sure.
I can appreciate. Writing, art, they feel like 2 different things.
And yeah, we've talked about it before, but the thing I love the most about Invincible is it's the boys in the way of how it feels like it treats superheroes in a more realistic way, but it's in an earnest way. Like, it's not making fun of it. It's trying to truly examine like the superhero tropes in a realistic way without being, I don't know, curmudgeon like The Boys is. But I love that a lot, and I can't really wait to see what the rest of Invincible does, because I've been enjoying the hell out of this season. As far as games go, KCD2, again, I'm going to say the same as you. I'm not going to go off too much on it. I absolutely adore the game. I hope all the RPGs take a lot of notes from this, especially when it comes to, what's the word I'm looking for? Immersion. And just their systems and how sleeping works, how food works. At least give me the option to do stuff like that, because it's really fantastic. I think the alchemy system is one of my favorite brewing like systems in a game when it comes to potions and stuff like that. It's so well done, and I can't recommend it, the game enough in general. So as far as other games go, I really haven't been playing much aside from Gooch, and I've been talking about it in Discord. I've been jumping back into Atomic Heart. I didn't own it. It's off Game Pass now, I believe.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I need to buy the game. And it was $40 or $42 for the deluxe edition, which includes the season pass on PlayStation. So I was like, okay, awesome. I'm going to pick that up.
Yeah, the
I've
third
been playing through
DLC
it.
like came out like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, very recently.
Yeah.
And it introduces a fire polymer, apparently, which is cool.
Yeah, I think
Which
it's
feels very
another character. I'm not really necessarily sure what the DLC is even about. But
I think it's as far as I was reading, it's like a continuation after the alternate ending one.
Okay. Yeah. The second
so-
DLC is not like that at all.
Right.
So it's good to see like it actually like makes sense.
Absolutely. I'm excited to get into those. I've been really enjoying this game. I mean, we said it in the review. You can go back to it. It is Russian Fallout. It, for all intents and purposes, you could slap Fallout. You could slap the BioShock name on this game, and I would totally accept that. The opening and everything, the art direction, the polymers, the combat feels so good. The open world is a little half-baked. I will give it that. But there is much more to it than I realized the first time around, and I really think it's a fantastic game. The main character is annoying in that first facility that you're in, but it's weird how he like makes, as soon as you come out of it, there's like this one conversation with Charles, like your glove, who was a great character too. I like how he kind of info dumps on you and makes you question Sokolov or whatever. He's just talking about the facility, and it's just so interesting. I really think they did an amazing job. And Sechenov, that's it. Thank you. What did I say?
Sokolov from MGS3.
Right. Sokolov.
Or Dishonored.
Oh my God, that is Sokolov in that too.
Yeah.
It's a game I can't recommend enough. Again, the open world I think is the most half-baked part of it all. I think it doesn't do a great job of explaining a lot of its systems to you, even though they're very interesting and well thought out. And I think that's a major issue with it. But you know, if you can get that game on sale and you like BioShock, I think it's well worth playing. And I think the main character, he's annoying for that first facility, but that's what I was going to say. He makes a change. He has this conversation with Charles where Charles is like, why are you being such a dick to me? Like, what's going on? What's up? And then he's like, I feel like I failed today. And he actually gives this very earnest answer. I'm like, oh. And then it kind of switches throughout the rest of the game. He says crispy critters a bunch, but I think it's really well done.
Crispy fucking critters.
Crispy fucking
indeed.
critters.
Yeah.
But that's really been it, honestly, Gooch. Not a lot to report. Just been really enjoying KCD. That's been taking up most of my time. I really haven't played much of anything. I know you've been bouncing back and forth between a few more things, so
yeah, I'm playing too much.
Too many games.
I'm not starting another game after Resident Evil 6. I'm gonna try to finish Fantasian, and then I'm still playing Gears 5, but there's really nothing new to say on that. Too much. Too much
indeed. Are we getting to it?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I think we're ready. Let's talk. Welcome to the third annual DNNey, guys. I'm your host, Anthony Ragucci, here to discuss, movies. I don't know.
Indeed. We should have.
What was I trying to do there?
One year, we might have to wear a tux.
Yeah,
or suit.
I kind of maybe when Luke comes back.
If we do, that would be a lot of fun.
Suits and
maybe some wine, some Chardonnay. Who knows? Just some nice.
So in years past, I meant to go watch back. We did our top 5. Each of us did our top 5, and then we went to the next person, and then we did honorable mentions, and then we did the ugly.
I think so. Yeah, that sounds about right. To be honest, I didn't go back and look, so I thought we kind of swapped back and forth last year, on the top or just in between, but I can't remember. I don't really mind either way.
How do you want to do it?
I'm fine with doing just your top 5, my top 5, and then we go from there.
And then we do
cycle
my
the same.
Mentions, your honorable mentions. Okay. So basically the DNNeys, for those who don't know the format, we are giving our top 5 films of the year. Then we're going to give our honorable mentions, and then we have the ugly, which are the bad.
Very loose
films.
form. This is no Oscars. We're not going to keep to a schedule of any kind. It's just to talk about.
And if
some
you're
of our
expecting
favorite
some
movies.
sort of Oscar kind of list, you're in the wrong place.
Or a super in-depth film conversation.
We put it around the Oscars because I do pay attention to what the Oscars are, what the films are, what's being nominated, what's winning, and stuff like that. I do try to watch some Oscar-nominated films just to be like, okay, what's being nominated and what are people saying that's good that I'm not watching. So I kind of try to do as much as I can on that. This year I didn't do super well. Like in the last few weeks I watched Flow, Civil War, and The Substance. That's all I got around to. I really didn't. This was kind of like a downer year for me in terms of like watching movies. I feel like I just didn't watch as much. Yeah.
I think I watched 28 movies according to my letterbox. New
That's
movies.
it? Oh, new movies.
Yeah.
Well, I count everything.
Yeah, so I do this for DNNey, so I can separate them. I have like my 20. It says 2024 release watch list, so that's how I can look at.
So I watched 41 movies last year.
Right.
New movies. That's a
different question.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
You gonna count these up right here?
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 new movies.
Okay, all right. So I beat you at least. No, but no, I think this year was actually pretty good for me. I think Letterboxd is an interesting app, just especially for that, where I can create that list and I can go back and I'm like, oh, this is every new movie this year that came out that I watched. I started already for 2025. I only have like 2 on there.
It is good because if I were to try to do this off the top of my head, I probably would have forgotten something.
Right.
But like, oh, here's my list of shit I watched.
I
just got to suss out what was new.
And even just going like, you can do it by the way of like looking up releases in 2024 and then just going back and looking at what you watched, but you miss stuff and things like that. So it was nice to be able to go back through and watch it. But Gooch, hit me with your top 5. I want to hear what you love this year.
Let's start it off with probably one of the first bigger films of last year. This film, the zeitgeist was burst. I think this film did something a lot of movies strive to do. It was in the conversation. Everyone was watching it. People were going to see it in IMAX. Everyone was talking about it. It outdid the first by, 1,700 miles. And that movie is Dune Part 2. Dune Part 2 made me a Dune fan. We watched a lot of Dune stuff last year around the release. I watched a lot of lore videos after that. Like, I really submerged myself in Dune last year. I was ready to go on that holy war with God Emperor Paul Atreides.
Hassan al-Gaib.
Yeah, and while it's not, I feel like Dune is kind of like half an Oscar movie, half not. Like it was nominated for some Oscars. It won a few things. It was up for movie of the year, but it didn't win. But obviously, it's not going to win. But dude,
that just shows me how. I'm sorry. That just shows me how unserious the Oscars are in general. Like But yeah, I'm sorry.
All the actors do a fantastic job. The CGI, the effects, everything in Dune Part 2 is just hard not to love, and it's hard to not want more. And we are getting more. So I'm really excited for when Dune Messiah drops. I think I'm going to probably hit the books.
I love it.
Once we get closer to Dune Messiah, and kind of like, I'll probably rewatch Part 1 and 2. I feel like that's like a must at this point. Man. But yeah, fucking love Dune Part 2. Next up for my top 5. Again, in no particular order, by the way. Just a random top 5. Deadpool and Wolverine. I was very close to moving this to honorable mentions. Very close. And the reason it's not is because I think it is a very, very, very special one-of-a-kind film. This movie is a lot about member berries and nostalgia, but I think it does it in a way that probably will never be done again. I don't think Marvel's can replicate the formula that happened with Deadpool and Wolverine. And it's not like, oh, we're going to reference all the X-Men, the X-Men and Fantastic Four and all the Marvel properties that's sort of been written off over the years. But the situation with Deadpool, him being a Fox for the first 2 movies, now moving over to MCU proper for the first time and referencing that and bringing back Hugh Jackman, who came out of retirement for Wolverine, had one of the greatest send-offs a superhero character has ever received on the screen, coming back for a role that honestly sort of does the same thing Logan did, but almost a little bit better in a way. like very different kind of send off. And, you know, we may see Hugh Jackman again. And I don't know how I feel about that, but we may see him again. But, you know, we know that all intents and purposes, the Wolverine from Logan is done. You know, we get a different Wolverine. And yeah, it was, you know, that theater was packed. People were cracking up. The movie is hard to dislike. Yes, it is member berries, member this, member that, member, you know, all this stuff. But I do think it is a very good film. All in all. And again, Marvel will never do it again because I think it is just truly impossible.
Lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, for sure. Next up, Alien Romulus. I think Alien Romulus, remind me of the director, Fede Alvarez. Thank you, Trio.
Yep. You're welcome.
Fede Alvarez, I think, kind of looked at the Alien formula and said, we need to do something different here. And instead of approaching it, I feel like every Alien movie has done, which is like adults, ship, planet, something like that. We kind of get a different approach where it's like, okay, we're going to do something with teenagers. They're going to be going on a mission and stumble into this thing. They're not out there looking for the alien. They just kind of come across all this stuff by accident. Right. And here they are in this horror situation that for an alien movie feels really fresh. The horror was great. The effects were great. A lot of practical stuff with the face huggers and the alien and some of the other monsters in the film. If you haven't seen it, I won't necessarily spoil it here. But yeah, I feel like there is a new reinvigoration with the alien, especially with the alien IP, especially after I think what would be called really mixed box office critical fan review films, which is Prometheus, Alien, and Alien Covenant.
Yep.
You know, I think like those were pretty good movies, but like I feel like you talk to like you could go pull 10 different kind of nerdy people and you'll probably get 10 different types of answers on that movie, or
agree.
Like someone on one end of the spectrum and the others on the other.
Yeah,
I think everyone who went out to see Romulus was happy they did.
Totally agree.
And I think we're getting a sequel.
Yes. Well, they're working on some type of follow-up.
Or he's doing some type. Yeah.
And then they did, and I'm so happy about this. The success of this enabled the announcement of a follow-up to Alien Isolation. So we're getting a proper sequel to that.
That was probably the last big alien thing we got.
Yeah, and I don't think that was received very well at the time, if I remember correctly.
I think
it was very middling for critical
I don't know
review.
if it was middling, but I think it got more popular over time.
No, that's what I mean. Yeah, like I think it started at a place of like 7s, and then now it's kind of more recognized for I think the 8 or 9 that it is, but
sure.
Yeah.
Next up, we have another film. It sort of blasts us back to the past, the early 2000s. Hell of a time to be alive. Hell of a time to be consuming anything, and that is Gladiator 2. I think Gladiator 2 does exactly what Gladiator 1 did so well and kind of twists it a little bit, and twists it enough to where I was really interested. Yeah, it is kind of the same story. You know, it's a gladiator, or it's a character who has fallen on hard times, you know, was at the top or some sort of peak in their life and is sort of kicked back down the rungs and it sort of has to climb back up the ladder and become sort of like something new. And that's what Gladiator 2 does. It's very referential. I feel like it is, you know, it is a sequel through and through. It harkens back to Decimus and Russell Crowe and what happened in that movie, but it's also doing its own thing. But it's also still kind of Gladiator 1, right? But like, it's been so long that I feel like it was cool to get back in that theater and hear that track from Hans Zimmer and you know, hear those speeches and watch those gladiator fights, all of which felt fresh and different from the first one.
It's funny the way you're describing it, and I don't mean this in an insulting way towards the film. It sounds like you're almost describing The Force Awakens, where it's like, it takes something old that's very much the same story, reinvents it, and makes it fresh for the new audience, and it really captured everyone.
That's a formula that I think unfortunately kind of works.
No, it absolutely does.
I feel like an interesting topic would be like, I don't know, talking about a new idea,
legacy
totally
sequels,
new idea for movies, because It's hard to make a new IP and a new kind of story that like you've never heard. It's
of course,
it's very difficult.
It's the hero's journey. It's the thing that's been since time in memoriam. That's the story that we've been telling, and we're just rewriting it a different way.
Right.
You know, I'm sure George R. R. Martin or Tolkien could probably explain it much better than a simpleton like me, but it's for sure true.
Yeah. But I think my last pick, a movie I watched only last week, I think actually embodies that. I've never seen a story like this, and I think it kind of worked. It's Flow. This was this won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature, and it's also a foreign film made by folks in Latvia. No, not Latveria, where Dr. Doom is from. Right. Latvia, the actual real country. So Flow is an animated movie about a cat who is trying to escape a flood. And he does that with a bunch of other animals, a capybara, a group of dogs, a big like bird, a lemur, and I think there's another creature. I might be forgetting, but yeah, and they kind of like survive this flood in this world that looks like ours, but there's no humans and there's only animals, and like it's very interesting. Like I think it's probably one of my favorite movies of the year.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Like I was emotionally gripped by it. Like every time the cat like got stuck in the water, you were like freaking out, or the lemur kind of has like a basket of like things he likes, and you know like he loses some of them sometimes, and it's like you really feel for these characters, but no dialogue. None.
That's what I thought.
Not a word is uttered this whole movie. And, you know, I feel like a film to do that and do it effectively, and, you know, watching what is happening on screen between animals is what's emotionally gripping. And, like, you know, I feel like it is a movie you want to watch with people.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I feel like watching it alone may actually kind of deter.
Right.
Because, like, you can kind of talk over this film.
Right,
and,
because it's all
and
visual.
React, and you're not missing anything. And, you know, because, like, you know, I watched it with Kathy, and I'm like, Kathy will probably like this. So, like, I definitely want to show her this. And she loved it. Her cat was watching it, too.
I saw
he was just, like, looking up when the cat was on screen and, like, watching it. It was, like, hysterical.
That's cool, man.
I highly recommend Flow. But I think Dune Part 2 and Flow were definitely my top two of the year. That's my top five.
It's pretty solid top five, Gooch. I gotta give it to you.
Yeah, I don't know if I did the greatest job explaining everything. I feel like that first year I remember like our talking, like I don't know, like our rambles of each film was like really good, but or maybe because we had Luke and Luke was doing a good job talking about films we didn't like. But I'm doing my best.
No, I think you're kicking butt, and I think it actually does make it. Thinking back now, maybe we should on these next ones for the next categories toss it back and forth in between for each one, because then that makes it so we're not talking endlessly for like 15 minutes. Because I think that's where I feel like I have my issues where I start to ramble, like because I didn't even think about that. But do you want to do it that way for the rest? Of these?
You want to do your top five, and
then we'll just pass it back and forth.
Yeah, sure.
Sounds good. Okay, yeah. As far as my top five go, there's a few repeats, of course. I'm going to start with one right off the bat with Dune Part 2. I mean, what more can I say that you haven't already said, Gooch? It's a fantastic film. Denis Villeneuve is a masterclass, a master craft when it comes to the craft. It's a movie that I could watch 1,000 times, genuinely. It's slow-paced, yet it keeps me involved. All the characters' performances are fantastic, and I think the only one I'm really going to stress here the most is Timothée Chalamet as Paul. That scene where he comes out as the Muad'Dib, and he kind of takes control of the Freeman. It encapsulates what makes that character so interesting, but it also shows you why Chalamet was chosen. And I am very glad these movies weren't filmed back-to-back, because I think he was given time to grow as a performer in a really great way that is shown on screen. And dude, when he's telling him to kill, what's his name? His loyal servant. Why am I forgetting his name? Javier Bardem. Why am I forgetting his name? And either way, he's like, kill me, Muad'Dib.
Stilgar.
Stilgar, thank you. He's like, kill me. He's like, why would I destroy my best weapon before going into battle? Are you insane? It's fucking gripping. It's so good.
Just to interrupt you really quick,
Yeah.
I do think Timothy Chalamet is probably like one of the best actors.
I agree.
Around
The way he's grown on me as a person and as an actor in these last like 3 or 4 years.
I
is
think
wild.
making fun of Timothy Chalamet like 2 or 3 years ago was kind of fun, but I kind of respect him as a
I do too.
as a thespian.
I totally agree. I think he's fantastic. He seems like a funny dude. He seems like an interesting guy.
Did you see the speech he made about he won the SAG for best actor for the Bob Dylan?
Yeah, he's talking about like, I'm aspiring to greatness. I saw like some back and forth on
I
that.
don't know. I'm like, I kind of respect it, man. It doesn't mean you're gonna be the greatest, but like the fact that like, hey man, I'm trying here and I'm trying my damn best.
And I felt like he said it. I don't know. He laid it out in what felt like a humble way to me. I think that's a hard thing to do when you're saying that. But he's like, listen, I'm going for glory. I see all these fantastic actors before me, and he names all these folks. And I don't know. It came off very sincere to me and cool. So, but I did see a kind of back and forth on that. Like, what? Why does he get to say that? And it's whatever. But yeah, Chalamet, man, kicking butt. Dune Part 2. Go watch it if you haven't. Jeez. What are you doing here? Next up, I'm going to keep going with you, Gooch. Alien Romulus. A really fantastic horror film that is tense, interesting, and takes advantage of the Alien IP in all the right ways. And just brings it back to form. It brings it back to that horror movie that the first film was. It was a horror movie in space. You were trapped in a spaceship with the killer, and you had to get away. And I felt that in this one, and they kind of bring in some aliens vibes. They even managed to touch on the Prometheus stuff and all that stuff in a satisfying way. I didn't think that was possible. I enjoyed the hell out of it. and like, I will say this about Prometheus. I love that movie as a science fiction film. I don't really love it as like an alien film, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Like, I think it works much better just as its own thing, and then like an alien kind of shows up at the end, and I'm like, oh, okay, like an alien-like thing. But still, I think it does that.
The Deacon.
The Deacon. I think it uses like that, like I said, that IP in a fantastically satisfying way, and I can't wait to see what Fede Alvarez does next. He did the first remake of Evil Dead, not Evil Dead Rise, but the one before that, which is apparently, I think, well received. So that's cool to see. But moving on, we're going to keep going with the horror here, Gooch. Honestly, 3 of my 5 are horror movies this year, which is funny. Nosferatu, a really fantastic film, a moody film. Robert Eggers is an incredibly interesting director that I feel like has a very specific mindset when he goes into making a movie, and I think it shows on the screen. Lily Rose Depp was awesome in it. Nosferatu, I could have lost the mustache, but overall, I felt like his representation was very interesting. I thought Skarsgård, the way he spoke, his mannerisms, how he was literally just like a rotting corpse. You got to see his dick, of course. So, it was.
Yeah, a pro for sure.
A pro for sure. I don't think that was his. Maybe it was probably a fake one. But that scene just particularly, like when he's going to kill Nosferatu and the sun's going down and it's lining up and the sun fucking peaks down below and he just gets up. It's great. It's a really fantastic film that I cannot recommend enough. It's moody. It's very character driven. You might be about it or you might not, but I was for sure about it. And I can't wait to see what he does next with Wolfman, I think is his next movie.
That's out.
No, so that's a different one. That's Lee Winnell, which it's apparently kind of disappointing, which sucks because I think he's a great director.
Yeah, there's a girl from Shameless in it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or no, Ozark.
The idea of that seemed to be more that it was from the perspective of him, like the man turning into the wolf, which sounds kind of interesting, but apparently it just wasn't landed very well. But I think he's doing one called like Wolfman, WULF, and it's supposed to be very heavily like Nordic and like old timey inspired. Okay. I like that he wants to keep his stuff period piece wise. Like people were kind of shitting on him, I think, when he was talking about like filming a phone, and he's like, that makes me ill. And it's like, no, I get it. He likes to be transported. He likes
Honestly, I think that the horror films in period pieces work better.
And I agree. I agree. I totally agree.
I kind of agree. Like anything that just isn't modern day, I think works 17 times better.
I just think you can do something very interesting with it for sure. And that's not to say modern day horror isn't interesting and riveting, if you will. But I do think there is something to a period piece, especially when you really commit. Like it felt like we were in this place. They weren't using green screens. They were on sets. It felt like a lived-in environment. Willem Dafoe's doing his thing. It's just fantastic. I can't recommend that movie enough. to finish off the three-peat of horror. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm a little dry on the whistle here.
No, it's okay. I get it.
I'm going to talk a little bit, Gooch, about The First Omen. Not to be confused with the first Omen film. This movie is called The First Omen. It is a prequel to the Omen films. I think it might be my favorite movie of last year. It feels like you could have made this in the 70s or like the 80s and brought it and put it in a vault and then taken it out in the 2010s and maybe like updated the film and made it look a little nicer. And I would have believed you. The way it's shot, the cinematography, even just these long, like, moody shots of when the priest dies, they're dropping like a stained glass window and it's just falling slowly. And the way the camera's going around, I'm like, they just don't make movies like this anymore. And we'll talk about this a little later when we get to Lara Croft on another episode. But there's just a bit of sauce to it, Gooch, that I just was like, where is this sauce? What happened to the sauce of this?
There really is a truth to that. I just want to point that out. Modern films
it's just very boring. And I'm not like a shot composition guy. I'm not a film guy who really understands that. There's just so many more interesting ways to shoot people that I did not realize it. Like
there is stuff that is just feels so
bland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Milk toast.
Absolutely. And just kind of cookie cutter. And I watching these old movies does kind of put that in perspective. Or not, this is an old movie, but seeing a new film utilize those old techniques in a very successful way, it stands out really well. And there is a scene in this that I think harkens back, is like an homage to an old horror film. I can't remember what it was. Dylan would kill me if he was here, where she's like possessed in a subway and she's like losing it. And Gooch, like, it is hard to watch. She's pregnant with like the demon.
Oh yeah.
And her water breaks. And she's like,
is it water? Is it blood?
It's not. It's like mucus and like it just is awful. Very terrible imagery. That's very well done, and it's a fantastic movie that I wish got a little bit more credit. I don't think it was advertised very well. I don't think they had a lot of faith in it, but I would highly recommend it. And to round off top 5, Gooch, I'm actually going to agree with you on this one. Where with Deadpool and Wolverine, I felt like it kind of was fluctuating for me.
It was really hard for me to like. Is it the top 5?
Do you know what it was fluctuating with for me in that honorable mention? Furiosa.
Okay.
Because I know it's I guess it's been kind of a mixed conversation on that for people. I thoroughly enjoyed Furiosa. I think one of the problems with it was just way too late, and they weren't able to use Charlize Theron, and I don't think people were as excited to go back into it. And I also think people don't remember that the first Mad Max, Fury Road, I should say, was not very successful when it first came out. It grew as a cult following, and people really enjoyed it once it got onto DVD. So bearing that in mind, and that this sequel came as late as it did with a recast Furiosa, I really think it's fantastic. And I think...
Are we talking about Deadpool? Wait, did you...
I'm talking about Furiosa. No,
Furiosa isn't your top 5?
No, it's not. No.
Okay.
But no, I was just talking about like why like that was kind of bouncing back and forth.
I was like, wait, what? I'm so confused.
But then when it comes to Deadpool and Wolverine, what you were saying with that movie shouldn't have worked. Probably. On paper.
I mean, it is such a weird circumstance of events.
And it's not even like it's not something that can be recaptured in the way of like, it's like a movie, and I don't mean this as an insult, because those movies used to be funny until they just got beaten into the ground. It's like a superhero movie, or like a movie 43 that like is almost making fun of the genre that it's in, but it's still squarely actually set in the universe. Like, you really can't recreate that. Yeah. And I think, Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman's chemistry just can't be beat. Honestly, you could have them saying a lot of bullshit and I'd still probably go along with it. Mm-hmm. But they didn't. I felt like they actually gave Hugh Jackman a heartfelt reason to come back. Sure, it was played for laughs a lot, and not that specifically, but the movie. There's a lot of laughs in it. It's a lot of very unserious, but there are a lot of
genuine good moments.
Absolutely, that I think shine through, and that probably this movie shouldn't have worked. And I think having Ryan Reynolds there to guide it, along with Hugh Jackman, and having a team behind him, made them capture that lightning in a bottle. And the specific circumstances around the character of Deadpool are the things that allow this to happen, and just all of these stars aligned, and we got this fantastic third. I guess it's kind of its own thing. I wouldn't even call it the third Deadpool movie.
It is.
It is for sure, but it's very much its own kind of thing.
Deadpool 3 for a reason.
Yeah, and I think they made the right choice at the beginning of of the movie to just fucking head on face the Wolverine thing by just using his body to kill people. Like, that was the way to do it. Just commit, not just address it right out the gate. It's just like, man, people are thinking we're just going to just dig this thing up for money. It's like, yeah. And then it just worked so well, and I was along for the ride immediately. So good stuff. I can't complain, but we'll get into the honorable mentions here.
I guess we can kind of, so Furiosa is one of my honorable mentions. I guess we can kind of play off of that since you were sort of already talking about it. Yeah, I liked Furiosa. You know, it's funny. Now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like I don't have all that much to say about it, but I feel like it did kind of stick out this year for me. I like the performances. I like seeing Chris Hemsworth play a role that he really is not akin to playing. You know, I especially with these Marvel actors who have spent years playing heroes. It's nice to see them play anything but and be like, wow, good work.
And really settle into it,
Yeah. I think you're kind of on point with, like, this movie may have come out way too late because I feel like it didn't. I think it did well in one respect, but in another respect, it didn't. I don't really even know what I mean by that. Yeah, like, I'm sure, like, did it make it? Did it double its budget?
No, Siri.
Was that Alexa?
It was Siri, yeah.
Oh, geez, that was scary.
No, I agree, Gooch. Yeah, I don't think it did well fiscally, like financially. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I think the thing that, like, there's one scene in, I think, the movie that really encapsulates why it's really fantastic to me, and it's that scene between Hemsworth and Furiosa at the end where she's like, what does he call her in it? It's really great. He's just going at her. He's like, you're me, little D. You're
little
gonna be.
D, yeah.
They're having this kind of battle of wills, if you will, and just this battle of, like, little philosophy. And I think it's really fantastic. And just that whole kind of rivalry throughout that movie made it worth watching. I think the world of Mad Max is kind of wild and interesting in itself. I liked how they did build the lore up a lot more in this. It felt like they focused on the world a lot more. It was fully confirmed, Gooch. This was the first movie to show that they are in Australia. It's always been, I think, implied for the most part. This one actually zooms in on Australia at the beginning of the movie, and you're like, oh, we're here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed Furiosa.
Since I only have one more honorable mention, would you like to do another?
Yeah, sure. Why not? So yeah, well, I'll save the substance talk for when you get to it. That's on there. I'll talk to why. I'll speak a little bit as to why I enjoyed it. I think, it covers a lot of interesting themes within Hollywood.
No, I think you should talk about it in your honorable mentions because it's not in my honorable mentions.
That makes sense. Okay, so yeah. I'll get into it here a little bit then.
Yeah, and then I can play off what you say.
Absolutely, sounds good. I enjoyed it. I think I kind of went in with high expectations just because I was hearing about it so much.
Did you see it in theaters?
No,
Okay.
we watched it on streaming.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. I just felt like it was a little long. I by the end I was like, I get it. I get what the message is. And I think that's also the point of it, and some people will talk about that, and it's almost the idea is to beat you over the head with its themes by the end, and how Demi Moore's character feels as an aging Hollywood star and what she would give to be young again and what that means for her, and this idea of, like, her thinking that these are two separate people, but really it's just her own mind that she can't just accept, like, these are the rules, and if you follow the rules, you'd be able to, live your life the way you want it, but you got greedy. But then she treats herself as a younger person as this totally separate entity. And I think it's an interesting kind of thought experiment and way to visualize, how the Hollywood machine chews up and spits out women in particular. I can't speak to too much on those themes besides that, but I thought it was a good watch, and I think it's worth the watch. I don't think it's as gross as I was expecting. I don't know. The grossest part was at the end, but it was, like, so wild and insane that it didn't even... I was like, this isn't real at all. So, I don't know. It didn't even really register with me.
My next honorable mention and my last one is Nosferatu. I'm not a horror guy. So going into Nosferatu, yeah, it is a monster movie, but it's definitely a horror movie. I feel like monster films can sometimes, like, not really... might just be in an own genre of themselves, like
feel separate from horror to you.
Yeah. I feel like you could make a monster movie like Van Helsing, for example.
Like,
it has a lot of horror elements in it, but it's not a horror.
It's an action movie. Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like Nosferatu really got back down and dirty with the vampire genre and really understood it. And Remind me of the director.
Robert Eggers.
Yeah, Eggers really like understood what he wanted to do here and executed it really well. Great cast. Lily Rose Depp, I think, is going to get a lot of gigs from this. I feel like she's going to become a name for a little bit, not just in horror, but in other stuff. I'm interested to see her outside of a period piece, because I feel like a period piece does kind of like square you in a role that like is not normal to like other movies.
For sure.
You know, it's like a very specific kind of character you're playing. And she plays it really well. Skarsgård is, he's terrifying. I like the mustache. I was fine with it.
That's fair. Hey, it's period.
My dad didn't like it.
It's period appropriate. I get that, and he probably has a mustache like that in the book, but I just felt like it obscured his face too much. I don't know.
Yeah. But I did like it. I would definitely see an Eggers movie again. I've been trying to watch The Lighthouse for fucking years.
Yeah,
that's a movie I really need to get around to. But
homosexual
his filmography is something I probably need to go watch.
No, for sure. And I mean, I know there's a few different camps with Eggers. Like I believe some people feel he's kind of sold out to a degree, especially with The Northman, in the way of like he went a bit more mainstream, man. Because I think The Witch and The Lighthouse especially are very like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Snooty film movies.
Not even snooty. I don't know if snooty is the right term, but like you will take from it what you will. There's not really a story per se. There's events that are happening, and you have to kind of gather your own meaning from it. Apparently, The Lighthouse is what's so funny.
I'm thin. There's a meme of the Lighthouse where Willem Dafoe goes, Fortnite. That's it. I just thought of his
Fortnite.
Dumb fucking face.
You can barely understand him in that movie too. Apparently, that movie's
it's like about like he's Scottish, right?
He's Scottish, and they're two lighthouse, attendants, and apparently, like it's just about repressed homosexual feelings, like for each other.
Oh,
stuff
really?
Like that. Yeah. Like
I know they're trapped in the lighthouse together, and they go kind of nuts. But
just to follow up again on Nosferatu a little bit, I will say it's almost more even of a possession movie than a monster movie in some ways. Like Lily Rose Depp's, performance in that, the way she just literally is acting, it's all her. Yeah, it's
her facial expressions.
It's wild. Yeah, wild stuff. Good stuff though.
Very uncomfy.
Next up on my honorable mentions, we got Juror Number 2. This was a Clint Eastwood flick.
Who's the
He was in Nosferatu.
Yeah, what's his name?
Nicholas Hoult.
Thank you.
Lex Luthor.
Yeah. I was like, he's in this. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really, really interesting drama.
Is this a sequel to 12 Angry Men?
No, but it's definitely within that vein of like a courtroom drama. So the idea is this gentleman, Nicholas Hoult's character, gets called to jury duty, and he gets selected, and he's getting read through the beginning arguments, and he's realizing, oh, I might have committed the crime that this man is on trial for. And this guy, back in the time, back a year or two ago, he's gaining all the facts. It's like this, what is it? I think, this guy and his girlfriend get in a fight at a bar, and then she leaves the bar.
Modern day?
Yeah, modern day. And she's drunk, and she's like walking down the road, like in the rain, and he leaves her, the boyfriend. And Nicholas Hoult's character is a recovering alcoholic, and he's at the bar that night. And it's very vague as to what happens at the bar. If he says he didn't drink that night, his wife had like a miscarriage, and he went to the bar and was gonna like break, but he says that he didn't. And then he's like thinking back, and he's like, I do remember like hitting something on the road, but I didn't see what I hit, and it was like it might have been by. So he's like piecing it together, and it's really interesting. I would really recommend it. I don't want to give away too much beside that. Clint Eastwood, I think, is fantastic. I think they did rob him by not putting this in theaters. This was straight to streaming.
Clint Eastwood is in it, or
he's a director.
Directed?
Yeah, he's a director.
Okay.
Nicholas Hoult's amazing, dude. I love seeing the Holtessance a little bit, Gooch. I got to say, I feel like he's in.
Is that what we're calling it?
That's what we're calling the Nicholasance. I don't know. That doesn't sound good.
The whole
Yes,
the first one.
Yes, the Holtessance. I think he's really great. It's funny. I didn't really like him. I feel like when he first came onto the scene, almost in the same way of
With
Colin
like
Farrell for me.
Yeah,
I was like, he's fine, whatever. But now I feel like he has had his due specifically. And I feel like he's getting his recognition. I really can't wait to see what he does as Lex Luthor. And yeah, Juror Number 2, highly recommend it. It's on HBO if you have your subscription. Check it out. And then I'll just go through these last two really quick. A Quiet Place Day One. I haven't seen any of them. This was the first one I saw. I feel like I didn't want to see the other two because I knew what happened at the end of the first one. It got spoiled for me forever ago. So it felt like almost like there's no satisfaction in me watching it. I still should. This one is squarely set away from those. It's about day one of the invasion of these monsters. And I gotta admit, Gooch, I thought it was going to go one way, and it went a completely different way. I thought it was going to be like this kind of exposition dump of where the monsters came from and why they're invading, and like you're seeing this unfolding event. And, you know, that's part of it, but it's mostly just focusing on these two people who are having the worst day ever during this invasion, and they're just trying to get through it, and they're trying to get out of the city. Lupita Nyong'o, it plays like this woman who just found out she has cancer, also, which adds a layer like that's very interesting because she's like, I actually don't even really want to get out of New York. I just want to go get a slice of pizza from this pizza shop that I love, and I don't care if I die. And she runs into Johnny Storm, what's his name, who's going to be playing Johnny Storm? Joe Quinn. And he's trying to get out of the city. I forget his exact like dynamic and his background, but they kind of form a bond.
Is there talking in this?
Oh yeah, definitely. But you know, they're keeping kind of quiet. Since there's so much going on, they can kind of be a little bit louder, it seems. People are figuring out that they have to be quiet. But again, it's mostly focused on the characters. It's not really a big kind of focus on the aliens, which I kind of expected and I appreciate. It's very much about what's happening to them in the moment and how they're feeling. And I gotta say, it's very much worth a watch, especially as someone who hasn't seen any of the movies. I think it's very easy to just jump into. And then I'll finish off with a final honorable mention. Another one from Lupita, actually. She plays this main character.
Oh, yeah.
Wild Robot. I watched this with my girlfriend like a month ago. It's about this robot who, I guess, gets lost off like a transport in the middle of the wild, and it's like a helper robot. And it's just a bunch of events unfolding as to like how it wants to get back to the factory. It doesn't really know why it's there. It's
She
a very
plays
kind of
the
loose
robot?
story. She does.
Okay.
And it's very good. Kids would love it for sure. It's just a fun, heartwarming time.
I have to admit, I love non-Disney animated films getting recognition. Flo and Wild Robot were nominated.
Yeah, it's
for
like the
Best
third year in a
Animated.
row, apparently. That's apparently
Yeah, I mean,
wild.
I think that's really telling.
Yeah.
I like what. I think a Disney film was nominated.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I mean, it
have
usually
to look up
always
them.
are.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like I feel like, you know, there was a time where Disney was the place to do animation. I think when you're talking about like Don Bluth and some of those other like rogue animation studios that were competing with Disney when they were putting out The Little Mermaid and Aladdin and some of those Disney films we grew up with, and then now it's like, yeah, some team from Latvia is fucking making this great animated film. Or
Right.
Who's Wild Robot by?
I actually don't know. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, well, you know, either way, I think it's telling. I
is.
think they're clearly telling better stories and more impactful stories, and those are the films people are going to watch just because it's Disney. I feel like with people our age, I think that comes with like, this could be total shit or this could be good.
Oh, that's DreamWorks as well.
Okay, it's
Robot,
DreamWorks,
yeah.
yeah. But even DreamWorks, I don't think has like big hits.
I mean, I think they have like the Minions and no, that's Illumination.
Yeah.
I think like Shrek's their big one for sure, obviously, and that's coming back now as we saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, Gooch.
Yeah. But that's it for the honorable mentions. Let's talk about the ugliness
The poopy.
of this year. And let me start off. I think this is going to be a tandem conversation.
Yeah.
Madam Webb, Kraven the Hunter. I'm combining the two since they are part of SPUMM, which is...
What about Venom? The
not
Sony
Venom.
Pictures universe of Marvel movies.
You can include Venom, but
That's
We'll
successful.
talk-
Yeah.
we'll talk about them both. I feel like Venom was not that bad. I even said that during the review.
Right.
Madam Webb and Kraven the Hunter. This year in 2024, we have officially hit the lowest of the low of comic book films we can do.
Of the modern era, for sure. Yeah.
How these films got made, how they got released, is an enigma. I have no idea how anybody signed off on some of the worst shit I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not going to act like I've seen really bad movies before. But these are really bad movies to the point it has tarnished Marvel's overall reputation. When people are getting confused that Madam Webb and Craven are in the MCU, when like the normies think that, like, that's not good.
Right. But that's also what Sony wants too, which is the fucked up part.
Yeah,
because they just want to ape off that. Yeah, like that.
Yeah. They just want people to come see it.
Exactly.
That them getting in.
That's
what they need.
Yeah.
They don't care if they like it or not. And it's just the fact that like we've gotten so low and like we're scraping, like the barrel is empty and we're like scraping the wood at the bottom of the barrel that like still has some of that juice left in it, and we're like breaking the pieces off and we're eating that. Like that's what like watching one of these movies is. And it's so funny that we got 3 of them from the same studio in 1 year. And thank God we're done.
SPUMM overload.
Thank God we're done. But man, Jesus Christ. Tough watches.
Yeah, man.
Really tough watches.
I can only agree. The sad part is I do think you're right. I think it affects people's view of superhero movies in general and the state at which they are at in the public consciousness especially. I think, if you're a superhero movie, period, you're facing an uphill battle right now just because it's the uncool thing, first off, but also they've had a lot of misses that are very big swing and misses, especially when it comes to Sony, just pumping out this shit because they're like, well, they got a taste with Venom Gooch. And they're like, oh, this one was successful. Well, we can just do this with all of them. I do think in a separate universe, if you will, there is a Craven movie that's probably fine, that's probably enjoyable, that you could make somewhat interesting. And then even when it comes to Madam Webb, I think Madam Webb will be way harder. But I think if you have smart screenwriters and smart producers that come in, they can make something out of that because it's an established character. It has a lot behind it. But they just didn't want to do that. They were like, we're going to make these villains heroes, and people are just going to accept it. And it's like, no, you're not. You're taking these ancillary heroes that most people don't know about from Spider-Man's catalog and just turning them into major characters because they're superhero-esque.
Because it's what you got.
And you think you think that's just what the fucking people just feed them their slop. They want the superhero? Fucking feed it to them. They'll take it. And, kudos to everyone out there. We're like, no, we aren't. Like, this is slop, and that's disgusting, and I'm not going to taste it. Thank you very much. I think we have to do the solemn duty of seeing it, and, that's just part of it. I did have a lot of fun in the theater with Madam Webb, but just because of our experience of watching it, not because of the movie.
Yeah. Craven was
just boring.
Yeah. Like, this was like, we had no fun. There was no fun being had.
The one scene at the beginning of the movie when he raids the prison, I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. And then it just downhill from there.
Yeah.
And again, I think that there is probably something interesting you can make there, especially if you commit to him being the actual bad guy. If he's Craven and he's hunting Rhino, that's a cool movie, actually. I think you could make that into a cool fucking movie. But no, they want to make him Craven the Hunter, who's the good guy, and then by the end he sits in his chair and does the Craven the Hunter's fucking seat. And then
he does the Craven the Hunter thing, guys?
When he just
Craven the Hunter!
When he's on the fucking chair that maybe a few people have seen the comic of. I should say that a few normies have seen the comic of. I don't know, man. It really is mind-boggling. And I think it's a primo example, Gooch. And we say this all the time. The people at the heads of these companies have no fucking clue. They don't know what they're doing. They were put there just because they got the job. They just come in and they wreck house. I mean, look at WB Games. Look at how that went from and it's totally separate, like a 5-second thing. They went from this top tier studio making amazing games to just shit that just canceled a bunch of shit, and it sold off a bunch of really interesting IP. And that's because of leadership. And then I think that's what we see here with these movies especially. It's just feed the people their slop. They'll take their slop. No, they won't, you idiots. You could have seen this from a mile away. Anywho, that's my diatribe.
I'm going to go to the substance next for Ugly. And I only watched this 2 days ago. And, it was just like, I don't think I have time for The Brutalist. I want to watch it, but 3 hours and 30 minutes for movies that I don't really even know what it's about. It's like a kind of a big ask.
And then that speech with Adrian, that made me want to watch it less, if I'm honest.
Yeah, so The Substance wasn't for me, Trio. Wasn't for me. It was a bit of an uncomfortable film to watch. I didn't really love the hyperbolicism,
hypersexualization stuff.
No, the hyperbolicness of the
the world.
The society in that movie that like, oh, we don't accept like old actors, which I'm just kind of sitting here and I'm like, are we? I get the message of the film. I can understand it, especially within somebody's point of view where they feel like they're old and like if only they were younger again, and they getting older does kind of suck for everybody. But I feel like as a society, I'm like this devaluing of a female actress because she's old. I'm like, I'm just not sure I agree. Like, I get what they're trying to do, and I don't disagree, but I also disagree, if that makes any sense.
Well,
I'm watching and I'm just like, I think we have a lot of respect for older female actresses. Like, I'm just kind of I'm just kind of sitting here and I'm like I get it, but like at the same time, I'm like, I'm just not jiving with it. I don't think the performances were overly worth anything.
Sure.
I kind of like, especially Demi Moore. Like, I'm like, I get it. She hasn't been around for a while, and this is her first film in a while. And I feel like it's a bit odd that it's like very telling to her career, as she was very popular when she was young, and as she's older, I couldn't tell you one thing Demi Moore's been in recently.
Exactly. Yeah. No,
I was like, are we saying something about Demi Moore here that we shouldn't be saying? Like, I'm like, I don't know if that's appropriate.
Well, no, but I think that is the, I think she is very much saying that is something she's experienced too.
Yeah.
And, I think I'd like to think we've gotten better as a society and within Hollywood within the past 20 years, especially with devaluing women specifically in films based on their looks. Because I think especially back in the 90s, and I'm sure in the 2000s,
everyone loves a hot mom. That's what I'm saying.
But as soon as she's not, you're missing the point. As soon as she's not hot, then she's thrown away. Is the idea? And
but do you think Demi Moore's ugly?
No, but but by Hollywood standards, by what they were looking for back then, yeah, she was. But for them, she'd probably walk in and they'd be like, got a lot of wrinkles here. Like, that was way more normal in the 90s, and I think even the early 2000s.
I think for
especially.
A modern setting, it didn't make sense. But if it was like 80s, 90s, sure. But it's almost like an ultra violent movie.
For sure.
Like, it's very hyper, like the society, like you can feel.
I'm trying to think of the word you're saying too.
You can feel how unreal it is.
Yeah, and that's
like
on
it
purpose.
doesn't feel
It's a
real.
heightened reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where like, we have the exec played by Kevin Dennis Quaid, and he's like
Harvey, which I like,
eating the shrimp, and it's like
disgusting,
gross.
Well, and it's like a world that like she just has. In this world, there's a banner with her on the thing, and it just says "new show." It doesn't even say like a time or like where it's happening
Hollywood,
or anything.
A New Year's Eve show.
It's not giving you any information. Like, you just know. Apparently, it's very much a hyper stylized world.
Yeah, I feel like from like the get go and like as it went, it was a little long in the tooth, and I'm like, I am not vibing with this. Like, nothing about this is really doing anything for me. I didn't love the body horror. The end just felt like, what is going on at this point?
Yeah.
And then now there's heavy metal music and we're just spraying blood everywhere. Like, it just didn't feel like anything worth a conversation about almost.
No, that's hey man. Listen.
Yeah, like I just didn't jive with it. I kind of watched it because Margaret Qualley's in it, and because she's in Kojima stuff. I'm like, I gotta watch it.
Yeah.
And I just didn't like the substance at all. I thought the idea of the substance is cool and how it like the idea of what that does is interesting, but like I don't think it was executed in a way that I like.
Right. No, I hear you, and I will say for me again, like I mentioned, it didn't hit the highs that I was expecting because I feel like we were hearing about it a lot this year. I still do appreciate what it was saying, and I can get behind, the message and what it's trying to put forth, but that is very much the point of the movie, and it's very much drilling it in. And, that is also the point of it, that it's hitting it over the
This was a horror movie I just didn't like.
And I don't even know if I wouldn't even really
I would call it a horror movie.
Yeah, I guess it's a body horror movie for sure.
I was uncomfortable watching.
Sure, yeah.
Like, especially if she's sticking that needle in that pus thing on her spine.
Yeah, that was like the worst thing for me though. Like, I don't know, but even like her coming, like being birthed.
Really?
Maybe my mind is fucked a little. Like, it just looks so unreal to me that it doesn't bother me at all.
See, like in a game, I probably wouldn't bat an eye at it, but I was pretty grossed out watching it.
Well, Gooch,
sure.
I think I'm a desensitized fuck, if I'm honest. So that's probably part of it.
I don't want to know what you're watching, but
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's just because it's so... It's so wild. Like, there's nothing realistic I could see like that. That's why. Whereas if you... I actually talked about this with Tamirez. I was like, if you show me like a knee surgery in a movie, I'm like, ugh.
It's real.
Yeah, because it's real. But like, if you show me a woman being birthed from another woman's back, I'm like, whatever. Like, I don't know. Like,
again, if I saw that in a game, it would probably be different.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
So what's next for the ugly for you?
Next up for the ugly for me, Gooch, and I think these two were on yours too, my last two,
Yes, they are.
was Rebel Moon. I don't want to pile on Zack Snyder here. You know me. I love Zack Snyder's work. I think he can do some truly amazing stuff, especially when it comes to the visual department. I just think he needs a little guide, some guide behind the
I thought you
scenes.
said he needs a little guy.
He needs a little guy. He needs a little guy on his shoulder. He needs a producer that he trusts, that he works with well, that can tell him when to rein it in a little bit. Because I think unfiltered Zack Snyder does not work for the general audience. And I think we've seen that with Rebel Moon, a little bit more with Army of the Dead. I think that was a bit more successful than this, but still not that successful because it didn't, get picked up after, and we haven't seen the continuation. It's just, I want to see Zack Snyder get back. Dude, him meeting with Gunn, I don't know if anything's going to come of that. But giving him the authority, that would be cool. I think that would
that's a weird
That's
property.
a weird thing. And listen, and again, I think...
And Zack Snyder, a weird...
a specific guy and a visual guy. And I think, I guess that comic came out
I was
going to
say weird, eccentric director.
For sure, yeah. And I think that came out in a time of like big splash pages and like action scenes, and that was very much a spectacle comic. So I think giving him that, giving him a script to work with, letting him choose his cinematographer, you get a really cool product. I just don't think unfiltered Zack Snyder is the way to go, though. That's just, I think, where I'm at with him.
Yeah, I was really upset with part 2 of Rebel Moon. I specifically, not Rebel Moon as a whole, part 2 of Rebel Moon. I really liked part 1, and I liked what it was setting up and where it was going, but where it was going was so boring.
Right.
Like that part 2, I was just so disappointed.
Like we're back on the farm planet?
Yeah, I was like, this is not the way I wanted to go. And I think it was a big failure on Zack Snyder's part, and I think he can do a lot better. And I think I would tend to agree with you. I think he needed somebody, especially with an unproven new IP. I think he needed somebody to help him flesh more of his ideas out.
Fine-tune it.
Yeah, but I've heard nothing about the director's cut of that movie. I'm really interested to watch it to see, like, I actually disagree with you. Zack Snyder was filtered for these movies. Unfiltered Zack Snyder is this rated R cut that came out after.
Sure.
So that's what
fully
I want to
unfiltered,
watch.
Definitely, yeah. But I guess he's unfiltered in the way of like, this is his idea from whole cloth.
Oh yeah.
Everything in this movie is from him.
From
you know what I mean?
Yeah, from his inception to delivery.
Exactly.
We'll call it.
The cut, sure, he's had to cut things out in violence, but yeah, I still think it's very much him.
I wanted to do. We've talked about this off podcast, but I wanted to do I wanted to watch Rebel Moon and then like come back and talk about it, like not as a review, but more of as like, did this work? Like, let's talk about Zack Snyder and like his recent project. But it never kind of happened, and I think there really wasn't just interest from not only me, Trio, but me. I was just like, I want to watch it, but like I'm not now.
Yeah, I just had no interest to go back to it, sadly.
Yeah, and we'll wrap it up with our final ugly, Borderlands. I mean, as we're reviewing a bunch of video game movies, Borderlands is the bottom of the barrel for video game adaptations. Like,
it's an element of a bygone era.
We didn't even try. It just feels like they just did not understand the assignment to any degree whatsoever, and there was no passion or love or anything put into this movie at all about anything about it. They played the game or maybe watched it for like an hour and then we're like, oh, let's make a movie out of it. Yeah, like they watched the trailer for Borderlands 2 and we're like, let's go.
I think if you cast different people, Gooch, that's like a 30% better movie.
Totally miscast movie.
Like just all these old people, like Kevin Hart as what's his name? Kevin Hart gets a lot of hate, which may be deserved. I don't usually hate him in the movies that I feel like he's like specifically made for, especially like a comedy and stuff like that. But bringing him in to play like Roland, like the big army guy,
he's not big.
What? Yeah, like I don't know. It just is such an odd choice. And then who played the angel or whatever? What's
Kate
her name?
Blanchett played Lilith.
Fantastic actor, but like, why is she Lilith? Like, can't we go? Like, are you going younger? What are we doing? I don't know. Very odd. Very odd indeed.
Not true to the source material at all.
It feels like you could have, like, I say this all the time, but you could have made that in 2008 and then played it now, and it would have been like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
they played
that
this
quality,
right after. Yeah, this is like it looks like a studio head saw the game for an hour and was like, we can make this, just get some of the designs, but don't worry about the story. Who cares about the story? It's a dumb video game. No one cares about the story. We can make our own story. It'll be better. That's literally, I think, what their thought process is. Yeah. But yeah, shitty way to end it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's it. That's it for the top 5, the honorable mentions, and the ugly. Like I said at the top, 2024 was not a year of, there were some hits, but like, I feel like a lot of movies where it was either opinions on one side of the fence or the other. A lot of movies that I didn't watch, that weren't kind of in my sphere to begin with. I feel like the past 2 years, I feel like a lot of the movies on our list or that we were talking about were things I knew about. But once we got to Oscar season, I'm like, I haven't heard of any of these movies.
No, it's true. It's funny. I think this year for me personally, maybe not as far as like Oscars go, was really fantastic. Like my top 5 are 5 movies that I thoroughly enjoyed. And I still have more on my list that I think I loved a lot. Dune is of course the highlight for me. It's amazing to see that film fully realized and that book fully put to film. And yeah, just, dude, horror continues to kick for me. Nosferatu, Romulus, all that stuff. It was a great year for me. I thought 2024 was a good one, and I'm excited to see what 2025 will bring.
Interesting.
But I think Oscars-wise, I agree with you specifically.
Do I
give a shit about The Brutalist? No.
I think I really said that because like I feel like my honorable mentions were really lacking.
Right.
And I felt confident about my top 5, but like I feel like Gladiator 2 could have been like tapped off that list and put in honorable mentions. But yeah, my honorable mentions for the first time in the 3 years we're doing this, it was only 2. I think I've had like 5 or 6 in there in the past, where it's just like, yeah, like I could put Civil War in there, but like it's not a genuine like honorable mention.
I could have probably put that
like I liked Civil War, but like not enough to like put it in the honorable mention where I feel like it could have been in the top 5.
Yeah, like honorable mentions for me are like ones that on top the 5 I want to recommend. Like I will definitely recommend to everyone, but honorable mentions are like, yeah, also watch Juror Number 2, watch The Substance, watch Furiosa. Like these were great films. So yeah, great stuff. Hopefully you at home enjoyed this conversation. We're not very technically savvy when it comes to our film talk, but god damn it, do we love it. Gooch, anything else on the DNNeys?
That is it, friend. That is it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for joining
Let's close this show that is appropriately length, unlike the Oscars.
Absolutely.
Not that long.
Well, thank you all for joining us for the 3rd annual DNNeys. We really do appreciate your time. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are found. Just search Delco Nerd Network on your service of choice. We have a Facebook page, a Discord channel. All that good stuff will be linked down below. We're on all the social medias as well, at Delco Nerds on anything with an @ sign. You can find all this information on our website, delconerdnetwork.com. You can even email us your comments, questions, or concerns to delconerds@gmail.com. We'd be happy to get back to you. But for Gooch, I've been Trio. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay nerdy. We will see you next time.